Good morning to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, respective radio stations island-wide, and online viewers. I'm Rolika Roach, and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, December 4th, 2024. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Public Health, Social Development, and Labor, Richinel Brug, to address you. Minister Brug, you have the floor.
Good morning to my fellow ministers, members of the press, members of DCOM, and everyone joining us via the social media. Good morning, St. Martin. It is a pleasure to address you today as your Minister of VSA. On the 26th of November, I had the honor of being sworn in as your Minister of Public Health, Social Development, and Labor. I would like to thank all those that in one way or the other have contributed to my appointment to this ministry. I would also like to thank all those that have sent out congratulation remarks and also words of encouragement and also words of support that they believe in me that I will help in improving the quality of life for the people of St. Martin. So I say thank you. I am deeply committed to tackling our most pressing challenges within the ministry and developing sustainable solutions to enhance the well-being of our people. To start this journey, I have actively engaged with my team and stakeholders during my first week, so one can say I have hit the ground running. I actually engaged with the departments to find out exactly and to get a better understanding in the ministry's key operation, challenges, and opportunities. First, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Secretary General, Ms. Joy Arnell, for her invaluable guidance and support during my initial days in office. During my initial meeting with SG, we discussed the personnel challenges within the ministry, such as the understaffing and the function book that needs to be updated. I was also privileged to meet most of the dedicated civil servants of the ministry who have worked tirelessly every day to serve the people of St. Martin, especially in their times of need. Their passion and dedication are truly inspiring. Thank you. As I said, I hit the ground running. Sworn in on the 26th. Immediately on the 27th, my team and I met briefly with department heads for the ministry, for the public health, social development, and labor. These individuals included Ms. Fana Anel, Ms. Chantal Kroeneveld, Ms. Peggy-Ann Drost Richardson. These discussions provided critical insight into the important projects that are leading and the challenges they are facing, such as understaffing, something that keeps on coming up in all the different departments. We have also begun the review of the budget, identifying key priorities for immediate and long-term actions. Later that day, we were informed of a pressing situation at the St. Martin Medical Center. Immediately, what I did is that I, together with my colleague Minister of Vermi and with the department related to VSA, we sent out the relevant departments, inspectors, to look at the situation. In addition to those departments, I also sent out a member of my cabinet also to join them in order to find out exactly what was the situation at the medical center. At that time it was, it was very important for us to make sure that all stakeholders were there. So we also met with members of the union. We also met with members of management as it was really important because it is a health-related matter, or could have been developed into a health-related matter, which had our priority. We understand that everything is right now under control, but we are still monitoring the situation, and we'll also have follow-up during the coming weeks. In the evening, I attended the Grand Bogart of the insurance, the opening celebration of Bogart Insurance at their new locations in Cahill. And that was my first day as VSR minister. On the second day, and I'm just giving you an insight just to let you know that I did hit the ground running. On the 28th, we had a National Career Fair, delivered live hair presentation on St. Martin regarding to the Working in the Caribbean event that will be held on March 28th and 29th in the Netherlands for the integration of on and offline talents to try to recruit individuals to come back to St. Martin to work. On Thursday was one of the highlights of my day, where I got to enjoy the Thanksgiving dinner with our senior citizens, home, away from home elderly organizations, sharing time with our seniors, reminded me of the importance of fostering a sense of community and care, principle that will help guide me as your VSR minister. On the 29th, I visited the Collective Preventive Services, CPS, where I had a constructive discussion with Ms. Eva Lisa DeWeaver, correct? I may have pronounced the name wrong, apologies, regarding the department's goal of upgrading, especially when it comes to the technical aspect, and persistent challenges of the department that the department is facing. At the inspectorate, I witnessed a remarkable effort of team that was largely managing itself, despite the limited resources. My visit to the ambulance also allowed me to engage with Mr. Richardson about key issues, including ambulance repair, the fleet, and the urgent upgrade of their facilities. In addition, as part of my commitment to social development and empowerment, I was honored to attend the master classes just for men and dads organized by the Department of Community Development, Family, Humanitarian Affairs. This initiative underscores the importance of strengthening our community and empowering individuals' values, to which I wholeheartedly support. The highlight of my week was attending church. I attended the Methodist Church service in Phillipsburg and had the honor to receive a special blessing, which holds deep meaning to me. Because while going through talking to the different ministries of the department, I understand that it is not something, all solutions cannot come by me alone or by my fellow colleagues, but it's something that I truly believe that I need help from the Almighty in order to solve the issues of our people. So definitely, that is definitely one of the highlights of my first week in office. On Monday, December 2nd, I continued, where I met with the NRPB to discuss one of the most important priorities of my ministry, for me, in my opinion, which is the mental well-being of our community. It is something that definitely has my attention, especially with the recent suicide rate, the amount of young children that are committing suicide. So at NRPB, one of the discussions that we had was starting and finalizing the NRPB project when it relates to the facilities for mental health. We discussed about the potential challenges that the construction it may face, and we agreed that we're going to work together, that once these challenges are known, we're going to work together in order to solve them. But both parties, the ministry together with NRPB, has decided that we are going to, this is one of the projects we're going to do our utmost best to finish within these 4 years. I continued with a second meeting on the 2nd, which was also very important, SZV. I met with management. We also discussed the matter of mental health. We spoke about the challenges that SZV faces with outdated legislation, the collection aspect of it. We also indicated to them what we needed from them in order to ensure that our people receive better health care, affordable health care. So that is something that is still in discussion. And moving forward, we have agreed that we will meet on a regular basis. This week, this first week, and this is only some of the things that I'm telling you, was a very productive one. And I want the people of St. Martin to know that I intend to continue working extremely hard to ensure that St. Martin can have a better quality of life, especially for our vulnerables, because there are a lot of issues and growing issues that over the years some have been somewhat plastered and others have been neglected. But I intend to go through all these challenges and address as much as I can, preferably all of them, ensure that at the end of my tenure, that the quality of life for the people of St. Martin would have improved. Thank you very much. These were the end of my remarks.
Thank you, Minister Brug, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment, and Infrastructure, Patrice Gums Jr., to address you. Minister Gums, you have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, those viewing online and listening as well, pleasant good morning to you. It's a pleasure to address you as in this first press briefing of the new Council of Ministers. And I'd like to begin by stating that in my introductory remarks made last week, I identified 3 critical areas for attention during my mandate. These 3 are conservation and decent living, waste reforms and drainage, and finally, governance. My remarks this morning will begin by touching upon the impact of the recent rains of the last 2 weeks and the lack of the proper drainage, so the point 2, waste reforms and drainage, and the impact that has had on the island. And of course, a number of concerns that I've received in the ministry as a whole, and of course, everyone has very similar concerns, the state of our roads. I'd like to inform everyone that right after the rains sort of relatively subsided, because they continue for quite some time, the ministry set out to document exactly how many potholes and road damage had occurred. We actually found that nearly 200 potholes, new potholes actually, emerged within the space of 1 or 2 rain nights. What does that mean for the average person, of course? What does that mean for our costs? What does that mean for our limited capacity? And of course, the reality that we have limited companies in the island to do this kind of work. I'll offer with you just a brief example of what we are facing as government, and of course then ask you to realize that there's an unsurmountable, well, quite a large amount of work that has to be done, but it's not insurmountable. Between the 20th, the 21st, and the 22nd of November, a total of about 95 potholes were repaired in the areas of Beacon Hill, Airport Road, Simpson Bay, Union Road, Welfare Road, Correlator Road, LB Scott Road, and of course, Poundfield. For 95 potholes, the government paid about 56,100 guilders to repair just those amount of potholes, noting that the largest amount of potholes have not been addressed as yet in the area of Arch Road, South Garden Road, and of course the area of Dutch Quarter. There are still a number of different areas that still have to be addressed. Why do I say these figures? Because a number of persons have come to me asking the question as to what is happening with the roads, why aren't they being repaired? I think it's very important to realize that things that I've said even before taking on this road, the biggest challenge we have on St. Martin is drainage. The lack of drainage means that the patchwork that we have done for a number of years has literally, very literally peeled off the roads. We actually began the road surfacing project just 2 months ago, as you will recall. That has been on pause, of course, due to the rain, the impact of the roads. and will now, of course, most naturally incur a delay as we cannot, very much expectedly, to continue to resurface the roads during this period of time. The roads are very saturated with water. They remain very filled with water. And also, we are just entering the high season. So we have to strike a balance between resurfacing and, of course, leaving the public access and right-of-way open. What the ministry will be doing for the next coming weeks is trying to continue to patch and save what we currently have. And then going into next year, towards the end of this year, in the beginning of next year, we will begin the resurfacing project again. So I do, of course, ask your patience. Please manage expectations. We cannot fix every single road in St. Martin in a space of a month. It takes about a week to repair one in the resurfacing program. So I think I ask your indulgence and also to manage expectations and be realistic. We have a severe problem with infrastructure. It's something that we all knew. It didn't appear 2 weeks ago when the rain fell. The rain just exposed the critical issues that we need to address as a country, and we will continue to do it. My second point deals with the matter of the burial grounds. As Minister of Romy, I'm also in charge of burials and cemetery management. And one of the key things that I have noticed, as we know, so many persons in our community have passed away, particularly in the last couple of months. And of course, within our own ministry, we had 3 losses. So I'd like to again acknowledge the loss of the lives of Michael Brown, Ricardo York, and Basil Leonard. And thank you again for their services and to their family, much ease. One of the things we are actually trying to address in this coming mandate is actually how we manage these burying grounds. Government currently has no registry of the people buried in the burying grounds. So unless the families personally continue recording, remembering where exactly their loved ones are buried, there is no idea currently as to who is buried where. This is something that we're actually going to initiate, idea to have a register for the persons who are buried. The KB community actually approached me as the minister fairly recently regarding a pilot project that they wish to do, which involves, one, repairing the cemetery at KB. As you know, the wall has been damaged for quite some years. And also to what began as a private cemetery has now been used for mixed use. There's also some damage that has been done with trenching works a number of years ago through the cemetery. And one thing that they have asked for, and I think good initiative on their part, is that anyone who knows of relatives or persons who are buried in the KB community cemetery, please make yourselves known to the community council. Unfortunately, I don't have the emails for them at hand, but I'm very sure all of you know them in the community. The president, Ms. Sharon Kanagiter, is very much well known in the community for her work throughout different areas, and she, of course, is spearheading this initiative. What government is going to do is actually use this project as a pilot on how we work towards managing all cemeteries in St. Martin, be they private or public. And I think one of the key things we have to remember is how we beautify and manage cemetery plots. There is dignity in death as much as there is in life. And I think the manner in which we look at burying grounds, they become, for lack of a better word, dumping grounds for people, and then we kind of forget them. Unfortunately, that's not how I plan, but fortunately, that's not how I plan to continue going forward. And of course, I would like to tell everyone that you have until December 31st to contact the Community Council. You can also contact the Ministry of Romy as well regarding any persons you know or family members, relatives, or friends who you know may be buried in KB Community Center, because we are going to begin this pilot project with looking at the reality we have limited space in burying grounds. This project will also look at identifying long abandoned burying plots and possibly removing the remains, unfortunately, of persons in there, because the reality is if we don't get a hold of the management of these areas, we're going to continue to have the same challenges as well. So please go forward to the Community Council, also contact the Ministry of Romy, or to anyone you know who may be buried there. Even if there is a headstone, we encourage you to let them know as we create a database and a management system for all burying grounds going forward. Finally, and on a bit more positive and less gruesome note, very happy to announce that we actually received a 1.9 million euro subsidy from the Dutch government. This was something initiated based on discussions that I had in my very short tenure as Minister Plenipotentiary, where we had a discussion about the capacity issues in the ministries across the board, but also within the Ministry of Rummy in particular, knowing that I would be assuming this role within a couple of weeks when we had these discussions. So we've received €1.9 million, from the Dutch government. 500,000, well, 1.4 million actually will go towards capacity within the Ministry of Rummy. In particular, it will go towards addressing the capacity to actually execute the waste reforms. So this is based on the trust fund projects that we have, in particular regarding the EDMP, so the waste, the current dump, so to speak, as it's called, with every effort to ensure that we address the shortcomings in waste management, the execution of a proper waste authority, and as well as I mentioned several times over the past few months, the reality of that we will have to start introducing a tipping fee. So garbage can no longer continue to be free. We all have to play our part as well. Of the remaining €500,000, that will go towards the purchasing of new stormwater pumps. If you recall, in August, the team repaired the stormwater pumps which are located in the Vrommy yard. They have not been working for a number of years. There was a temporary use of the fire truck pumps. Those unfortunately couldn't handle capacity and they broke down. And what's happened now since August is that we've been managing the water through a very old pump, which thankfully has done us well, particularly over the last couple of rainy weeks. But as you can imagine, with a pump that has been out of commission for some time and sort of been temporarily doing the job of what a whole infrastructure should do in terms of the drainage of the country, it has indeed gone off and on within the period of the last rains, and we have managed to put it back online. So the 500,000 towards the new storm pump, and of course the 1.4 towards capacity building within the ministry. These are all under the efforts of a wonderful team, in particular infrastructure, and in particular the Vrommy Yard Division, who pointed out very quickly that we cannot continue to operate under these makeshift sort of methodologies. And of course, finally, one of the key things that I've spoken about is capacity, capacity, capacity. So in addition to the 1.4 million, we've also started a program with NEPA, where we're also bringing in 3 young students, started actually about 3 weeks ago, who will come into the Vrommy Yard. Their specifications are masonry, carpentry, welding, and automotive, mechanical automation, automotive mechanics, let's call it that. And they will actually, the idea is to support the fact that we have quite an aging Vrommy Yard. So how can we best support them, but as well as also support and promote vocational education and skills. So with that, they will be here for the next year, and we're using it as a pilot project as well to see how we can go forward to support people at NEPA and also support the ministry as a whole. And from that, that's my remarks, and looking forward to working with all of you in the media in the next mandate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Gums, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Justice, Natalie Tacklin, to address you. Minister Tacklin, you have the floor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. To all those viewing at home, I'd like to thank the members of the media that are here today. And also, of course, good morning to my fellow ministers. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's an honor to address you for my first press briefing, as we got sworn in last week, Tuesday. I wanted to start, actually, before I go into the onboarding process, to first take a moment to express my condolences on behalf of the Ministry of Justice for the passing of Mr. Jean Illich. Mr. Illich was a VKS volunteer for over 15 years, and I would like to, again, extend my sincere condolences to the family, friends, and esteemed colleagues, as well as the entire VKS force, who are left to mourn Mr. Illich's loss. So, as my colleagues all said, we hit the ground running, I think similar to my colleague here at VSA. But for me, as part of the onboarding process, I, along with my cabinet members, spent my first 3 days last week working closely with the Secretary General of the Ministry to gain a comprehensive understanding of the Ministry's ongoing projects, policies, and the challenges facing the Ministry as a whole. One of my immediate priorities is to conduct a thorough inventory of the ministry's operations, which would provide me with a deeper understanding of how the ministry functions and help identify key areas that may require immediate attention or improvement. My preference has been to take a proactive approach in order to understand the inner workings and operations within the ministry. And where adjustments are necessary, I intend to ensure that they're guided by thoughtful and data-driven decisions, with the overarching goal, of course, of delivering a justice system that services are efficient, accessible, and responsive to the needs of this society. Earlier this week as well, I visited as we know, the Justice Ministry is spread out quite a bit over the island, so it's a little difficult to just walk downstairs and meet everyone immediately. So we've been doing this in phases. Earlier this week, I visited the Illage Road. So there we have our staff bureau, as well as judicial affairs, and then of course several divisions within the Immigration and Border Patrol Services. So from there, we really met everyone and tried to understand exactly kind of from the admissions process when you go up to the window at immigration, up to our mobile unit that goes out and does patrols and are at the border. We went through and met all these individuals. So during that visit, I met with, of course, that hardworking staff and received briefings on their responsibilities and gained firsthand insight into their processes. I took that opportunity as well to express my gratitude for their dedication and their invaluable contributions. But I emphasize not only my intention to better understand the challenges so that we can work to improve workflows and foster a positive work environment, but for me, what's especially important as well is the well-being and the satisfaction of our staff. I think that that's crucial, and they are the backbone of the ministry's success. And I think within justice, we've seen that we have a ministry where for a long time, a lot of justice workers have felt like their basic operational needs are not being met. So for me, important as a minister, not only to look at how we can improve the efficiency of the processes that and the services that we deliver to the public, but also to ensure that every justice worker comes to work with pride every day to be a justice worker. So looking ahead, my plan of action includes setting clear priorities and timelines for improving the processing of applications and requests. I've heard a lot about the timelines at immigration and the way that this affects people. So we're looking at streamlining procedures to enhance efficiency of both the staff and, of course, to the public that we serve. My ultimate goal is to improve the delivery of justice services to benefit the entire country, because a secure and just society benefits all of us. In the coming weeks, I'll continue visiting other departments to deepen my understanding of their operations. And this ongoing assessment will, of course, help me shape the roadmap for this ministry, not only directly in the coming days and weeks and months, but also for the entirety of 2025. And of course, going forward, where hopefully I can govern and lead this ministry for a full term of 4 years. So we are working on a roadmap of how to put that all in place. So I think that's briefly for me. And of course, I'm available for any questions from the media. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Tacklin, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, Melissa Gumbs, to address you. Minister Gumbs, you have the floor.
Good morning to members of the media, my fellow ministers, and those joining us online. As I said in my inaugural address, I have the responsibility of guiding the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport into a different type of future than one that it has lived so far, a different type of existence. I believe that this ministry is critically important to St. Martin's development as a country. So I too hit the ground running, as the catchphrase of today. But prior to being sworn in, I was also meeting with critical stakeholders leading up to that momentous occasion last week. I've continued to do this since being sworn in. Monday, we had a very productive general meeting with the department and division heads and their staff, where I was able to meet everyone. And starting the coming Monday, I will be having one-on-ones with my department and division heads to identify their critical priorities in their units so that we can build a priority list that is feasible and achievable for at least the coming year, 6 months to 1 year. Further to that, one of my main priorities is also bringing some structure and professionalization to the ministry, streamlining certain processes, and working with the other ministries to help with their processes that also impact ECYS. That, of course, includes hiring. So when you look at P&O, for example, making sure that that process flows a bit smoother than it has been. I also want to take the ministry into a focus on evidence-based policy making that is also steeped in the reality of the world today. So we will be addressing certain realities, in particular when it comes to the digitalization of our schools and the way that students interact with technology, and also policy based on that ever-evolving technology. Just as an update on some things that I have had to address since taking office, of course, the question of the payments for the subsidized school teachers. The 1% has been signed off on, and that is now in process, and the 2% should be resolved today. There was some delay within the ministry, but of course, that is one of the processes that I'm looking to optimize and streamline moving forward. And the other critical item that I did my best to address is, of course, an update on the Prince William Alexander School. There's been many discussions about that in the media and, of course, on social media. We are moving forward with a solution that I cannot really divulge much information about right now. However, it will involve actually tackling it from a holistic point of view to make sure that the students are protected and safe as we move forward and manage that situation. Additionally, I will be receiving an update from the NRPB this coming Monday on the related projects to ECYS. So if there were any questions coming about that, the library, etc., I don't have that update as yet, but I will be providing one once I meet with the NRPB. And that's it for me for now. Just keep it short and sweet. And I look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gums, for your opening remarks. If you have just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, December 4th, 2024. We now move over to the question and answer session. The floor is open, and Stephen Cerulean of PJD2 Radio, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. Good morning to you, ministers. My question is for Minister Gums, Vrami. Minister, you painted a very troublesome picture as it pertains to road repairs and what have you. Can you help us to understand as to what kind of budget has been allocated for the repairs of roads?
Indeed. So every year we do have a road maintenance budget within a general line of the ministry. The exact same number right now, I'm not at hand with it. But what we do have is, it's important to realize, this year we were planning to do resurfacing. So we had a certain amount of budget for resurfacing, and that came out of CapEx, so capital expenditure. And we are basically doing road resurfacing and hard surfacing. Road resurfacing would have essentially repaired the roads that were damaged. What we're going to now do is see how we use the regular operational budget to fix all the potholes we have currently before we go back into resurfacing. The numbers I'll get for you and share with you subsequently, Mrs. Cerulean. Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Minister. I would now like to invite Emma Lee of Island Radio. You have the floor.
My question is for Minister of Education. So I am referring to the PFP's manifesto, your campaign manifesto. And in here you mentioned that there's non-negotiable coalition issues. There's 3 that you've mentioned. So one is about updating the LBHAM for financial management, having to do with the tender process. The other is about a realistic spatial development approach to the development of the island. And the third, which is interesting, is about the persons in the cabinet. So what is your plan to tackle these 3 deal breakers for PFP? And as it pertains to the cabinet, I believe you need legislation to actually do a screening process, but would each of the ministries be willing to provide the public a list, at least, of all of the cabinet members? Are they politically affiliated? And what's their background and role in your cabinet?
Well, I'll be posting the information on my cabinet later today. In terms of the other deal breakers, I do know that other Minister Gums has already spoken about his intention to come together with a cohesive and a feasible spatial planning strategy. So I'll leave that for Vrami to handle. In terms of the LBHAM, that was actually delivered to the Minister of Finance while I was still in Parliament. So that is in process and it's being worked on. So the legislation is there to be reviewed. Of course, as you know, capacity issues exist as well in legal affairs and government. So it will be for them to review it and move it forward in the legislative process. In terms of cabinet, I have two persons that are politically affiliated but come from educational backgrounds as well as ICT backgrounds. I built a cabinet that is strong in policy and that can actually help move the ministry forward on that evidence-based policy making that I'm speaking of, also steeped in the reality of what is facing young people today, and as well as our culture and youth and sports departments, because one of them also has that sports background. So for the other cabinets, I think as a party, we've always said that we will share our opinion. Everyone knows where we stand when it comes to the integrity of persons in cabinets, in government, in this arena in general. So persons will be held accountable behind closed doors and in public if necessary. And I think we've always made that abundantly clear.
Just for clarity, I think it mentions basically an equal accountability as ministers and parliamentarians, which implies some sort of a formal screening process.
Yes.
Will there be?
So there has
something?
been, the Prime Minister himself has spoken even before this mandate about the establishment of a screening law. Within Parliament, there is a plan to tackle certain areas of electoral reform that I think also includes a screening law, but of course I'm not on that side, so I can't speak to where that is right now. And I think that overall we can all agree that a screening law is a priority moving forward, because we don't want to see the difficulties in what has occurred over this year when it comes to screening, the subjective decision-making, to continue.
Thank you, Minister Gums. Thank you, Mr. Lee. I would now like to invite Jacqueline Hoffman of the Daily Herald. You have the floor.
Good morning. I have a question for the other Minister Gums.
Thankfully, this morning we're going to have two of the three. Otherwise, you would have a problem. Anyway.
Will you be able to speak as the Deputy Prime Minister about the bond issued by the Central Bank?
So, unfortunately, I'm no longer Deputy Prime Minister, or maybe fortunately. The Deputy Prime Minister is now the Minister of TEAT. So, Minister Grisha Heidegger Martin is Deputy Prime Minister, and I'm her deputy.
Okay.
So, unfortunately, the bond, I wouldn't touch upon it today, but I will encourage you to share the question with her, and then she'll reply upon her turn.
Then I have a question about your ministry.
Yes.
In this press briefing, you said that you would allow citizens the legally established right to appeal permits, building permits, hindrance permits, etc. However, 2 weeks ago, in the last National Gazette, there was a list of 47 permits published, and 44 of those had already become final, because only the last 3 issued on October 20 were within the 6-week time frame to appeal, and those have passed now too. It is impossible to see what these permits are actually for, starting with the one on 8 May, Simpson Bay Road 111. It's a commercial permit, but when you go there, you see it's fully built. So where is this, what commercial development is going to be there, and how is that when that's already buildings there? There's another on Simpson Bay Road 58 that was said that is Dolce, and it was said that Mr. Doran had issued this permit. But from this list, it is apparent that it was issued on July 12th. So that is 3 months after the Marcelina cabinet was installed. And this is residential, but this is a commercial apartment building that highly affects the neighborhood. And you would have received a lot of appeals if only people had known. Then,
Jacqueline, can you kindly pose a question to the minister,
yeah,
please? Thank you.
The question is, will you allow the media access to the building permits issued within the time frame of 6 weeks, so we can share the information with the public and people have the chance to know what is going to be built where, and allow them the chance to appeal?
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Indeed, we've actually had this discussion regarding the issuance of building permits. Important to know that if the building permit is published in the National Gazette, doesn't mean that I issued it. What is the biggest problem we've had within the Ministry of Roaring when coming office, and I've realized, building permits are issued and they're never published in the Gazette on time. So Dolce was never signed by my person. I didn't even have this discussion. So it being published in the Lance Courant is a technical error of the ministry in terms of its obligations to publish on time, something that needs to be addressed. Regarding the possibility of media access, we've discussed it as well with options as well with how we can do with the different permits. One, of course, is publication in the sort of existing papers that exist. Two, we've also had a discussion and suggestion coming from within the ministry as well and within the government is publication on SXMGov. The government's website, smgov.org. I think very true. The biggest issue, and I agree with you, publication has to be on time. Because again, it's a question of the legal ability to reply and to protest a permit. And if something is published July 12th, but signed in a whole different mandate and governance, then already your legal obligation to respond is already mitigated. So this has to be addressed. I am completely committed to transparency. I think what we have to address, of course, is the capacity and, of course, the clerical errors that happen within the ministry. And this has to be addressed and to ensure that things like this don't happen. Because it's impossible that something that everyone has been talking about, even during campaign of March and May, is only published now in July. So I completely agree. And indeed, I think what we have to do is go back to the drawing board on how we basically manage things like governance. And I mentioned it as part of my critical areas for identification, for attention in my mandate. And one of them is the first thing is digitalization of our permit system. Currently, what happens is that permits come in and basically no one hears about them unless they know the minister and can call the minister to get information. There's a severe capacity issue, and we're moving toward digitalizing. So the idea is once you get your building permit handed in, you know exactly who has it and for how long, and you can track the permit process. So by the time the permit is actually completed, we can flag it already and have everybody know that they can publicly, everyone knows publicly this permit is going to be issued and they can actually respond in time. Because with the issue, for example, this is published on July 12th, you already have a very limited amount of time as to when you can actually protest and appeal. So I agree with you indeed, and we will work towards making sure that that's more transparency given to the ministry. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Jacqueline. We now move on to the second round of questions. I would also like to inform the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, Melissa Gums, had to leave the meeting prematurely, so any further questions can be sent to her cabinet in writing. Stephen Cerulean, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Rich. Ms. My question is for you again. What are the plans of ROMI for the former location of the post office in Phillipsburg?
So we're actually having thank you so much for the question. We're actually having a very holistic conversation that not necessarily only includes my ministry, but also the government as a whole, as to what that entire area will develop into. I believe 2 parliaments ago, probably the last parliament, passed a motion towards designating that entire area as a public building area. So the Parliament, the High Councils of States, the possibility of a museum, the archives, National Archives. These are all discussions that are still being had. So there's no concrete plan as yet. There's a motion. And there are discussions going on currently as to what that site will look like in the future. So again, it's not a decision of the Minister of ROMI per se. It's a collective decision of the needs assessment of the country. There are several discussions about alternative options and locations for different buildings, but we have to have that we have not concluded anything as yet.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Stephen. Emily, you have the floor.
My question's for our Minister of Justice.
Yes.
So, welcome, and
Thank you.
I'm sure the transition's interesting. Yesterday, there was another scooter accident fatality in Colbay Hill. And one of the comments that we see regularly is that many of these scooter operators are operating vehicles without license plates, without insurance, without helmets, without the appropriate driver's license. So in a sense, isn't the justice system, don't they have a sort of shared responsibility in terms of what's happening in terms of accidents and fatalities? And so what's your plan of approach to making the roads safer for everybody, including operators and people that they may hit?
Thank you, Emil, for your question. I was starting to think I was just going to sit there for the rest of the hour and watch the Minister of ROMI answer all the questions. But obviously that it's something that has my attention as well. You know, we were having discussions in the cabinet during this week, you know, discussing the the issues to do with, you know, scooters and how that's being perceived, not only accidents, but, you know, in terms of even, you know, them being maybe a bit of a nuisance to people as well in certain things. I don't want to stereotype everyone driving a scooter either. I think with all the traffic that we have, maybe some of us should utilize more scooters, but definitely I do have an obligation when it comes to road safety. I don't have a plan of approach as yet, but I do intend in the coming week or so. The chief of police is actually off island right now, so I haven't had the opportunity to meet with him, but to understand, you know, the staffing capacity and also the capacity to enforce on the side of our police force and look into how we can tackle these issues, because I think it is something that affects, you know, everyone's day-to-day. So, and of course, we want to have a safe environment here on the roads. So I don't have an exact plan for you right now, but I can assure you that it has my attention, and it is something that I will be working on in the coming days and weeks. And I think we actually had a request to discuss it within the Council of Ministers next week as well, to see how interministerially we can also look at tackling, you know, whatever is going on with traffic, road safety, as kind of a holistic approach across ministries instead of us operating independently from one another.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Emil. Jacqueline, you have the floor.
I also have a question.
Look at that, my lucky thing.
There was a motion in Parliament from MP Roseburg and MP Irion related to the multi-million crime fund. By law, in September with the budget, there is supposed to be a list of projects that will be funded from the crime fund. I believe that motion has not been followed up yet. Do you know when you will do this? When you will present a list of projects? And also the question, we understand that a large part of the crime fund has gone to the prosecutor. How, you as a lawyer, how is it that the entity responsible for the collection of fines and is not held accountable for that, only there's a lot of outstanding fines still, millions, is also receiving the money from the crime fund that they are collecting the fines for? So the persons that have to repay, that are convicted by the court, those millions from, for instance, Mr. Heiliger, 5 million, a part of that has gone to the operations of the prosecutor, we were informed.
Okay.
So how is it that the person that, the entity that collects also is the beneficiary?
That is interesting. That's an audit of the crime fund is also, of course, high on my list. You know, everything within justice I know is a priority, but I know one of the things also within justice is always, oh, we don't have the money, we don't have the money. Within, I think, not only justice, it's across government broad. And in that sense, we do plan to sit and come up with ways that we should actually utilize the crime fund. You know, we have always, I think, over the years, the crime fund has always kind of been used as a little bit of a honeypot for, oh, we need this done right now, let's dip into the crime fund, without really the proper legal basis to do so. And we've allowed that to happen as a country. I intend to do that differently. You know, you mentioned me being a lawyer, and it is important to me that we start working in the country in accordance with the legislative framework that we have in place for reasons. You know, it's not just there for fun and games. There are reasons that our laws are written the way that they are, and they serve a certain purpose. So it is my intention to look into different types of projects that we can fund through the crime fund, and actually utilize it properly. You know, there's been a lot of talk too, for example, about our youth and things that are going on. You know, I heard my colleague minister mention, you know, higher suicide rates. You know, we've seen these school fights, things like that, drug abuse, bullying. I was at a youth event prior to my swearing in, where the youth themselves were talking about a lot of issues that are facing them. And I think, for an example, for what we can use the crime fund as is to tackle these issues within the schools. It's exactly what it's meant for. You know, coming up with programs, coming up with initiatives that we can execute. So I do plan to put together a policy, but I don't want it to just be a policy or bullet points on paper. Everything that I plan to do, I plan for there to be a proper plan of approach. How much is it going to cost? What is it going to be exactly? So that we have measurable policy, and that we know exactly what we're working towards. Not just an idea of, oh, I think we should do this, but then, you know, we get a lot of those things within government too. So within the cabinet, We're looking as well as, hey, really coming up with project proposals, coming up with plans. And, I don't want to just put a list together to put a list together. I want it to be a proper list that you can actually also hold me accountable for. That not as the media, also as Parliament, and even the citizens, that you're like, well, she said she was going to do these things. So that's the way I plan to approach this. And of course, the crime fund, we need to know how much is in there. I'm also trying to gain an understanding of what the issues are in terms of collecting fines. If it is in fact so that money has gone to the operations of the public prosecutor's office, then I need to look into those things and why that was and how that happened. But in any case, going forward, I hope to do things and I plan to do things differently. So I ask for a little bit of patience while I put that plan together, but I do have ideas, and I plan to sit with my cabinet to kind of crystallize those things and then, of course, present them to you and to Parliament.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you. We now move on to the third and final round. Stephen, you have the
Yes,
floor.
Oh, don't leave so soon. See, that's when you talk too fast.
Minister,
Yes.
the holiday season is quickly approaching. Parking has become a problem in Phillipsburg in particular. You spoke of road safety for all a while ago. What are your plans for parking in Phillipsburg in particular?
Parking, you mean the illegal parking in Phillipsburg? I think also an issue. I'm also looking at my colleague, Minister of Romy. Do you want to, maybe he can go after, or maybe better answer this question since he has a bit more background on this than I do.
Thank you. Indeed, the parking situation is interministerial. The first issue is that it is the space issue is a ROMI issue, but of course the regulation for parking is a TEAT issue, and of course enforcement is a justice issue. We actually have a number of proposals we have in mind, some very simple. We actually need to do something, and this is more long-term than it is a short-term holiday season. I think the short-term holiday season tends to deal with more enforcement and also efficient use of the space you have, and also making it more attractive to park properly, particularly in the fact that we have a whole APS parking that can be used. Most people don't use it because it's a very far place to walk. So in the role of ROMI, I think in the long term, it's about beautification of that area, shading trees to make it more attractive to park and walk. We have several listening discussions regarding what we can do with the strip of land in the long term along Walton Elizabeth Road. What we are also looking at too in collaboration with the Ministry of TEAT is how we can look at parking garages. There's a whole discussion around building parking garages. There's also a bigger discussion around looking at what we pay in road tax. The reality is it's very, very cheap to essentially pave to use the roads in St. Martin's 250, 275 guilders, give or take. And you also have to look at how you monitor how many cars come in. We actually have a list of things and discussions we're going to have with a number of the persons who are involved with car dealerships, because the reality is a number of tough decisions have to be taken. Parking is not necessarily an issue only of parking space availability. It's also about how many cars come into your country. It's about your quality of roads. It's also about how many roads you have. There's a number of pending infrastructure projects that deal with road. One is Link 6, for example. There's a number of other ideas that I have. I won't share them just yet because they're unhatched eggs, and I don't like to scramble unopened eggs just yet. But in any case, I think we do have at least a list of 6 or 7 things we'll be addressing, and we'll be announcing them in the new year for sure. But one of them also includes a carrying capacity issue for this country, because this morning I sat in traffic for an hour and a half, and that is unrealistic, and it actually diminishes the quality of our product and quality of life for everybody who lives in St. Martin. So it really has to be addressed holistically in the long term, but in the short term, we do have to look at basically enforcement and making sure that Phillipsburg remains attractive in this holiday season as well as safe.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Stephen. Emily, you have the floor.
My question's for Minister Viasa. So in terms of your portfolio, the Ministry of Viasa, one of the most important things that's in progress, I believe, is the SAHA, or the General Health Insurance. It has a huge impact on the financial stability of SZV and the ability to deliver quality care to the people in St. Martin. Have you had a chance to review the legislation, and are you in support of the current legislation as is?
Thank you very much for the question. Unfortunately, I have not had a chance to review the legislation, but we have had discussions with it with SZV. And also due to the continuation of government, it does have my attention. Currently, I believe the legislation is at SER. I'm waiting for the remarks on that, and afterwards, once we received it, I will look into it and also give Parliament a chance also to review the comments, considering that we are co-legislators, and then make up my position available to the public.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Emil. Jacqueline, you have the final
Thank you for
question.
the question.
Minister Gums. Yep. And another issue related to complaints. In this case, people complain, but they don't get any answers from VROMI, and that's about the water that is running from the prison. It's a known issue that this is gray water. It's the showers they use, all the water is collected in septic tanks. These need to be emptied on time by trucks, and VROMI doesn't send enough trucks up the hill, so the water continuously flows through the gardens onto the road. And now you have a situation, I can send you the pictures, where there's moss on the road and slippery roads. So the question is there a shortage of trucks, or is that the issue? Because when we wait till the new prison, a judge recently handed out 240 years in prison, so this new prison is going to be full capacity before it's even built. So maybe this long-standing issue needs to be addressed.
Yeah, indeed, no, and very true, Jacqueline. And I think one of the things that we've been working on as a ministry, because not only is this causing the issues for the people, particularly in Back Bay area of Point Blanche, but in particular, it's a massive erosion issue as well. This water has been trickling for a number of years, and of course, it's a short-term issue of addressing the water issue. If there's a shortage of trucks, I'm not sure about that. I'll verify. But what we do have in the long-term plan, basically, is we are speaking with someone regarding all the erosion issues in St. Martin that have happened, particularly post this rain. We actually have a discussion going on with someone who has engaged with government in the past, but wasn't contracted, in particular regarding how to deal with erosion, because the biggest issue beyond that is not just the water, but also how do we address the erosion issues there where the water is coming down the hill and causing massive issues. So it's twofold. I will investigate for you the shortage of trucks, but also just let everyone in the Back Bay area know that we haven't forgotten you. It's just a question of we have a number of erosion issues all over this island due to the drainage issues and the lack of proper infrastructure. And we are actually going step by step. So when the gentleman returns this week, we're actually going to visit that area as well and see how we can address, one, the topography, so the actual erosion issue, but also the current issue, the short term, the water. Because again, I've been there and it is quite dangerous with the moss on the road as well. Yes, indeed. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gums. Council of Ministers, members of the media, viewing and listening public, this does bring us to the end of the question and answer session. Members of the media, any further questions can be sent to the Minister's Cabinet in writing. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, or radio listeners and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, December 4th, 2024. For rebroadcast, tune into stmartingov.org, St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, Telemcell TV Plus Channel 15, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, and YouTube channel Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, log on to the Government of St. Martin's YouTube channel. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Roleika Roach, and wishing you a pleasant day further.